Okay, our next step is to write formulas for ionic compounds that contain polyatomic ions. And the process is exactly like writing binary polyatomics with one exception. There are some times we're going to have to use some parentheses. These examples will show you that when you do and don't need them. Pretty much parentheses are only used when you have to put a subscript behind a polyatomic ion because the ion stays together as a unit. The number outside parentheses multiplies the number of every atom, every subscript inside of the parentheses, just like it would be in math. So I'll kind of hit on that a little bit when I get to an example that has it. This first one doesn't. Ammonium acetate. And we're going to do this the same thing. Ammonium, it's a polyatomic, so we look at our reference table and we see that it is NH4 plus. And I'm going to write the ion just like it was a single element ion with its oxidation number. And I'm going to do the same thing with acetate, which is C2H3O2 minus. And then I'm going to look at my oxidation numbers. And I'm going to add them up and see if they add up to 0. Ammonium's +1, acetate is -1. Remember, we get these oxidation numbers off of the reference sheets. You don't have to try to figure these out. That's an AP Chem topic at best. So we're not going to have to do that. So we just need to clean this up to get our final formula, and it is NH4C2H3O2. No parentheses here because it already added up to 0. We didn't add any subscripts behind any of the polyatomics, so that's good. The next one, we have ammonium again. And then chromate. Chromate, we look at the reference sheet, and it is CrO4 2 minus. So here we have a case where the oxidation numbers don't add up to 0. So we're going to cross them over. 2. We can bring a 1 here if we want to. We really don't have to. And we're going to clean this up. And this is going to clean up to be NH4. We're going to use parentheses here because we're adding that 2 subscript behind there. We don't want to write NH42. That's not the same thing as NH4 because the way it's written now means we have 2 nitrogens, 4 times 2, 8 hydrogens. If we didn't use parentheses, we'd have 1 nitrogen and 42 hydrogens, and that just doesn't work. The rest of it, CrO4, we did not put any subscript behind that, so we don't need parentheses there. Okay, the last one we have is ammonium phosphide. Again, we have ammonium, NH4 plus, phosphide. Be careful. This is not a polyatomic. This is just the single element ion phosphide, and it's -3. It is in the nitrogen family, so it's always a -3. That doesn't add up to 0, so we're going to cross some oxidation numbers. And when we clean that up, NH4, again, we're going to use parentheses because we added a subscript to the NH4, and then just P. Okay, a few more examples. Ammonium chloride. Seems like I like ammonium this morning. It's okay. Chloride, IDE, single element. So NH4Cl minus. That already adds up to 0. So it's just NH4Cl. No parentheses around the NH4 because we didn't add a subscript to it. That's the most confusing thing about this whole thing is when to use and not to use parentheses. So let's go ahead with another one, calcium sulfate. Calcium is a group 2 metal, so it is always +2. Let me just write that a little cleaner instead of a plus plus. Sulfate is a polyatomic. We know it's a polyatomic. Be careful with that one. So we have a sulfate, and then there's sulfide, which is a single element. This is sulfate, so this is SO4 2 minus. And that adds up. Remember, we're doing smallest whole number ratios. We're doing that just like it was a binary ionic. So plus 2 minus 2 adds up to 0. So the formula is just simply CaSO4. No parentheses around the sulfate because we didn't have to add a subscript. Let's do one with sulfate that we are going to have to add some parentheses. Aluminum is plus 3. It's in group 3A. Again, our sulfate, SO4 2 minus. And it doesn't matter if you say 2 minus minus 2. I'm not that picky. That does not add up to 0, so we're actually going to cross both of those. So the formula is going to be Al2. No parentheses around Al. It's a single element ion. We never put parentheses around a single element ion. The sulfate we're going to have to, and when I wrote my sulfate I wrote it wrong. Sorry, it should be SO4. So this is going to be SO4 3. Okay, one more, and I'm going to slide this up just a little bit. Give me a little room to work with this. This is a polyatomic bonded to a transition metal, iron, and it's iron 2, so it's Fe2+. We know that because we have the Roman numeral 2 in parentheses. And then the polyatomic here is phosphate. Phosphate is the only -3 polyatomic on your list, so it's PO4 -3. And sure enough, that doesn't add up to 0, so we're going to cross a 3 and a 2. And when we clean that up, it's going to be Fe3, no parentheses, it's a single element, PO4 in parentheses 2. Parentheses around the phosphate because it is. Okay, I'm going to do one more example. This can be kind of confusing. Parentheses they aren't too bad when you have a subscript in the polyatomic, but the most mistakes get made with parentheses and polyatomics are with the hydroxide polyatomic ion because it doesn't have any subscripts in it. It's just OH minus. The same mistakes could, I guess, get made with cyanide, but it's not as common as hydroxide. Compounds are very common. So let's look at one of those, a couple of examples. So let's look at sodium hydroxide and calcium hydroxide. Okay, sodium hydroxide, Na plus OH minus. That's pretty straightforward because they add up to 0, so NaOH. Reasonable with calcium, let's do this one. Calcium is plus 2. I'm having trouble today writing calcium ions for some reason. And then the hydroxide, of course, is OH minus. That doesn't add up. So we're going to put a 2 here. So when we clean this up, problem is that looks reasonable, doesn't it? But that's not correct. That's 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogens. We have to keep the thing together as a unit, so it's actually 2 oxygens and 2 hydrogens. So you have to put that hydroxide in parentheses, even though you're not, doubling up on subscripts there. So be careful with that one. And that should be all the examples you need to do a little practice. Good luck.